Hello, everybody. Hello, Sarvash community. Happy Shavuot to everybody. Chag Sameach. Really great to be able to be with you today and to be able to share some thoughts on what I think is a really, really important topic. We're going to have the opportunity to think about and to really take some time to reflect on and to look at a few sources on the idea of self-compassion and self-care in Judaism and in Jewish text. Over the course of the past year, I think that all of us have struggled a lot with how we stop to take care of ourselves, care of others who we love. And I think that often we spend a lot of time thinking about others, and we tend to spend less time thinking about ourselves and our own self-worth, self-care, self-compassion, and so on. So let's jump into the sources here together. I'm going to share my screen with all of you, and I believe you'll also have a link available as well to access these sources. Okay, so source number one that I'd like to look at with you is one that is probably quite familiar with all of you. It comes from the book of Vayikra, and the text says as follows. I'm going to read some of the texts in Hebrew, some of them in English, and we'll try to translate, and you have everything here translated into English. So it says as follows. Lo tikom v'lo titor et b'nei amecha ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha ani Adonai. And it says here in the bold, at the end, to love your neighbor, to love your fellow as yourself, I am God. So what is this verse trying to teach us? If we look at it quickly, we all know this verse. This is pretty well known, to love your neighbor as yourself. But if we look a little bit deeper into this verse, what I think it's actually trying to tell us is that actually in order to love your neighbor or your fellow, you must be able to understand how to love yourself. The pasuk or the verse could have just said, Ve'ahavta l'reacha ani Hashem. To love your neighbor, I am the Lord. Why did it say to love your neighbor as yourself? And I think this is really interesting to think about here a little bit. We often think about how do we love our neighbor, but here it's really trying to tell us you can't really understand how to love someone else until you understand how to love or to care for yourself. So now that we understand the importance of this idea of self-care, of self-worth, of really thinking about how to love oneself as a basis for being able to love and connect or even respect other people. So let's now look at the second source from the book of Mishlei, from Proverbs, and it says as follows. Gomel nafsho ish chased ve'ocher she'ero achsari. The merciful man or woman does good to his or her own soul. A cruel man makes trouble for himself. We're obviously going to focus here on the first half of the verse, which says that a person who's merciful does good to his own soul. What does it mean, your own soul? A person who's merciful cares about their own soul. And we're going to have sources here that speak more to the spiritual side of people, and others that really speak about the idea of like physical care as well. So we're going to speak about mental health and also physical health. This obviously is more in the spiritual realm. And I'd like to take a look at with you here at the next source, at source number 3, which is a midrash from Vayikra Rabbah, which says as follows, and we're going to read this probably all the way through, and it's a really interesting twist in thinking about self-care in terms of one's own spiritual and mental health versus one's own physical health. And it quotes our verse, and it says as follows, the merciful man does good to his own soul, as we just read, This refers to Hillel Hazaken, to Hillel the elder, who at the time that he was departing from his students, he would walk with them. And they said to him, Rabbi, where are you walking to? He said to them to fulfill a commandment. And they said to him back, and what commandment is this? And he said to them to bathe in the bathhouse. And they said to him, is that really a commandment to bathe in the bathhouse? And he said back to them, yes. And then he said as follows, just like regarding the statues or icons or things that are owned by kings or important people that are set up in the theaters and the circuses, the one who is appointed over them cleans them, bathes them, and scrubs them. And they give him sustenance. And furthermore, he attains status with the leaders of the kingdom. I, who was created in the divine image and form, as it is written, for in the image of God, he made man. So even more so. And I think what this midrash is trying to tell us is something interesting. It's actually taking a jump here from the spiritual or the mental health to the physical health, which I think is a really interesting idea. I think it's interesting that that is the message of the midrash from a verse that's speaking about one's soul. It actually moves it and transfers it onto the idea of one's own physical health. And what Hillel Hazaken is telling his students here is that just like it's, really important to, clean physical things for kings and so on, so too, it's really also important to take care of our own bodies in a physical way that were created in the image of God, that were given to us from God, of course. And I would also say when it speaks here about physical health, it does not imply here like exercise, eating habits, these kinds of things. It does speak specifically about bathing. But I would argue to take that jump from here that like taking care of oneself is, of course, isn't only about bathing. It's about how we eat, how we exercise, how we take care of ourselves in a physical way. Let's take a look at the next source here together. And a lot of you might know this pretty famous story. We're going to read it out loud here together. And you've probably heard this even in camp and probably a Pe'ula or something or in some other place in your life. So here's the story. Once, the Hasidic rabbi, Reb Zusha, came to his followers and he had tears in his eyes. And they asked him, Zusha, what's the matter? And he told them about his vision. I learned the question that the angels will one day ask me about my life. So the followers were puzzled. Why are you worried, Zusha? You're pious. You're a scholar and humble. You have helped so many of us. What questions about your life could be so terrifying that you would be frightened to answer it? And Zusha replied, I have learned that the angels will not ask me, why weren't you a Moshe, leading your people out of slavery? And that the angels will not ask me, why weren't you a Joshua, leading your people into the promised land? Zusha sighed and he said, they will ask me, Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? And I love this story, even though it's pretty famous and you probably know it, because I think it's really getting to something a little bit deeper that we haven't spoken about yet, which is that, in the end of the day, a lot of people, and I do it, we all do it all the time because it's a automatic kind of like default. We often stop and compare ourselves or wish that we were in the shoes of other people. Oh, that person has that. That person is, has that kind of job. That person is doing that kind of thing. Their family, their health, where they live, whatever it might be, we are prone as human beings to really stop and compare ourselves to other people. And I think what this is really trying to tell us, it's telling us a lot of things. And this is not actually the usual message of this, but it's the message that I think I'm drawing out of it now, which is that really the idea here is that, at the end of our life, the question for us isn't about why were you not someone else? Why did you not live a life X, Y, or Z or this other person? But why weren't you a greater or a better Seth, right? Like, why did you not live up to your potential? And I think it really also speaks to like each individual and their own value in this world. And it challenges us as human beings to really think about what is our role in this world? Why are we here on earth? What are we here to kind of give? I think that's what this story really is pushing us to think about is you're not going to be asked, why are you not someone else? But why have you done all that Seth was meant or could have done on this earth in your lifetime? We're going to take a look at the next source here together. This, I think, is probably one of the most challenging sources and interesting pieces that we're going to have a chance to look at here together. This comes from the book, Likutei Maharan, which is written by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who you've probably heard his name before. And we're going to read it inside, and then we'll talk about it a little bit together. So it says as follows. Likewise, a person must find some good point within him or herself. It is known that a person must take care to be happy always and keep very far from depression, as has been explained in our works a number of times. And I also added here a really, really important asterisk, which says that, of course, depression as a mental illness is real, and this isn't meant to be a cure or just telling people to get over it. But the reason why I want to look at this is because Rabbi Nachman himself actually is known to have really struggled with his own mental health. There's an amazing and really hard book to read. It's very dense. It's actually called Tormented Master by Rabbi Arthur Green. It's like a spiritual and also like a biography of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. And you could see by the title, it really talks about him as a tormented master. Why does he speak of depression? Why does he speak of trying to find a good point inside yourself? Because I think he struggled with that. And he also is almost most famously known for the line, Mitzvah Gedola Liot B'Simcha Tamid. And we sing that song. We have sung that in camp. I've sung that translated into Russian many times. This idea of trying to be happy. And, he says that it's a mitzvah to be happy. That is not easy. It's not easy to tell someone who feels depressed, who's not happy, just to be happy. But I think what he's trying to tell us here is that you can't take care to always be happy and always keep far from depression, but that a person should try to find some good point within him or herself. I think to challenge oneself to look inside, even when things feel really clouded and we feel down about ourselves, to push ourselves to think about, to try to access those moments and those points that really bring us joy and happiness. I'd be happy to talk with any of you about this further, to discuss this text further, to look more into Rabbi Nachman's work and about mental health. I think there's quite a lot to really explore here. Let's look at the next source here together. This source comes from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, and we're going to read it here together. We're going to particularly focus on at the end on the highlighted portion. Why are we forbidden to make images of God? It is not because God is beyond all images, so that no image could possibly depict God. If that were the case, images would merely be harmless. God has an image, and that is you. You may not make the image of God because you, as a human being, are the image of God. The only medium in which you can make God's image is the medium of your entire life. And that is precisely what we are commanded to do. And here's the key part. Everything you do, everything you say, each moment and the way you use it are all part of the way you build God's image, I'm going to add, in this world. To take anything less than a full living human being like canvas or a piece of marble and call it the image of God would be to diminish God and to lessen God's image. There's a lot here to unpack. We're not going to have the time here, but I thought this is a really important source to include here. I encourage you to take a step back, read this again, read this a few times, read this together with other people. What is this play here about that we aren't allowed to create images of God because we ourselves are that image of God in this world? There's something really beautiful and really complicated and really dynamic about that idea, and that our living in this world is about bringing about the image of God to this world. So I'm going to sort of pause in a moment on this, but I really think it's a fascinating text and source to think about when we think about who we are and our importance, as people and as human beings, and our own self-worth, that all of us are created in the image of God. I actually, interestingly enough, I forgot, I did not bring that source, that all of us are created b'tselem Elokim, right? It's kind of coming out here in this source, right? Of course, all of us in the beginning of Genesis, of Breshit, are said to have been created in the image of God. And what does that mean for us and how we act in this world and how we treat ourselves as well as others? We're going to move on to the next source here, which comes from Pirkei Avot, and we're going to sort of jump through quickly in this in English. Rabbi Shimon said, "Be careful with the reading of Shema and the prayer, and when you pray, do not make your prayer something automatic, but a plea for compassion before God. For it is said, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, and renouncing punishment. Ki chanun v'rachum." It's a very, very famous line that we say when we take out the Torah. And be not wicked in your own esteem. It's an interesting add-on here, and the first part is a lot to think about as well in terms of intent and kavanah in prayer. But in a nutshell, what he's really speaking about here, be not wicked in your own esteem. Atzmecha, in yourself. Don't be wicked about yourself. Don't be wicked about your own self-esteem and your own self-worth. Why it's coupled here with this discussion on tefillah, I think is a great question, a really interesting question to think about. We're not going to address that here in this time, but I encourage you also to, please reach out to me if you have any questions, but to really reread this and to think about why that might be the case. What does our own self-esteem, being kind to ourselves, have to do with prayer and our own intention and kavanah in prayer? We're now going to move on to the next source, which is our second to last source. It comes from the Talmud and Tractate Yoma, which is all about the holiday of Yom Kippur. I would say this is a fascinating source to us as people who are living now today in 2021. So the Gemara explained another verse in Proverbs from Mishlei, as we saw another verse earlier. If there is anxiety / concern in a man or in a person's heart, let him or her quash it or squash it, to kind of like push it down. If you have anxiety or concern, you should suppress it in some way. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi dispute the verse's meaning. One said a person should forcefully push it out of their mind. One who worries should banish his concerns from his thoughts. To push it away when you have those thoughts of anxiety or concern or stress, you should just push it out of your thought. And now listen to the other opinion. And one said, it means he should tell Yisichena, siach, a conversation, a dialogue with others about his concerns, which will lower a person's anxiety. Wow. This source is an original source about mental health professionals and the value for going to speak to somebody else about the different things that you feel challenged by. It's a really forward-thinking text in a lot of ways, right? One opinion here is no, like push it out of your mind, get rid of the thought. But the other is actually here, what the word from Mishlei is trying to tell us is actually yisichena, siach. Go have a conversation with someone. If it's a good friend, if it's a mental health professional, go have a dialogue, go have a conversation, and that will help you to overcome the anxiety and the concern. We're now going to look at the last source, which is not a Jewish source, but I actually saw this poem that was shared, and I thought it was really interesting to look at in this context. It comes from a pretty famous book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And it says as follows. I'm going to read it here out loud, and please read here together with me. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. Even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. One way we can be more friendly and compassionate towards ourselves is by giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt. There's a lot to unpack here, and I encourage you to do that also on your own. The beginning part of this poem, I believe, is really speaking about this balance of being in relationship with another, with other people, and also balancing looking at oneself. In other words, be careful. You shouldn't get too into it. Let it be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. What a beautiful image of the water kind of rocking back and forth, but you're giving that space to each other. Fill each other's cups, support one another, but don't drink from the same cup. Even as we build a relationship with other people, and I'm going to come back to our first kind of opening source here that I started with, which said to love your neighbor, to love your fellow as yourself. I am the Lord. I think this idea, it kind of reconnects to the poem. In order to love or even be in relationship with another person or like another human being, we need to love ourselves. We need to respect ourselves and give ourselves that space to have self-respect, self-compassion, self-care, and self-worth. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or discuss any of these ideas or any of these sources further. I wish all of you a Chag Sameach, a wonderful, wonderful Shavuot. And hopefully it is a great opportunity to reconnect to Jewish learning, to Torah learning in some way, and to really hopefully spend some time to be able to take, a step back and to really think about ourselves and our own self-worth and self-value. Chag Sameach.